All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the Million Dollar Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with John Rowley. John, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show.
Kevin, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it, brother.
Yeah. And I know, we were just talking before we hit the record button here. You and I go back a ways.
We
I mean,
do.
for me, it was it almost feels like another lifetime and definitely another business, And
Absolutely.
and we were just talking, and I was like, and it was Brad Costanzo who had introduced us years ago. And I know you and I had done some strategic partner. We did some really cool stuff together back in the day.
We
And
did.
and so it's really cool to be here now having this conversation around the value and of relationships, because my experience over the years, and I've got to this point where I just believe 100% that as entrepreneurs, relationships are our most valuable asset. Everything else stems
Absolutely.
from that. And so I'm just
Absolutely.
really excited to have this conversation with you today, John. And what I'd like to do is just kind of start by turning it over to you so that we can set a little bit of context so people can get an idea of who John is and what John's all about. And so why don't you share a little bit about your background, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you do and the impact you're making in the world. And we'll start there, John.
Well, I'm an author,
Okay.
digital author as well. And I started off with 2 books, and I found out real quick that there was no money in hard books unless you were a motivational speaker. So I became a motivational speaker, and I was one of the top ones out there. And I had really good mentor by the name of Zig Ziglar, who was very, very helpful to me.
Mhm.
But I found out in 2008 that companies weren't going to hire speakers when the economy was bad. I was booked up for a couple of years, and I lost all my gigs. So I ended up in this business, and been in the fitness world, fitness and personal development world for the last several years. Last 15 years. I've
Okay.
done very, very well. But really, my passion is unfulfilled potential in people. So now I'm working with entrepreneurs, trying to encourage entrepreneurs, coach them. We've got a new mastermind we're doing online and things like that. So my passion really is, it's fitness to a degree, but really it's unfulfilled potential in others, because I see so many people that are so much more talented than me, regardless of what industry I've been in. They've got more talent, connections, better education, and yet I would always beat them. And it was because I worked on myself, whereas when they got out of college, they kind of finished working on themselves. So anyway, to answer your question, it's really unfulfilled potential in people that lights me on fire.
Wow. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, and it's interesting. Well, heck, I can say I've got a lot of personal experience with that. And I wouldn't change a thing. Looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. But I can also tell you, man, if I would have just got out of my own way, sooner, it would be different. But you know what? At the same exact time, we have to go through this growth process, don't we? We have to go through, and really now the way I look at it, I love being in this growth and discovery process.
Oh, me too.
I will be in this process for the rest of my life until my dying day. And I get to just continue stepping into this role of just being my best self and showing up in a way that's complete in alignment with who I am and the way that I want to show up. And the more I can do that, the more amazing things happen, the more amazing things
Exactly.
transpire. And so, what and I, with everything that's been going on in the last few years and stuff, there's a lot of people looking for stuff like what you're
Oh, I
just,
agree.
and so, okay, so now that we've got a little bit of context set here, I'm going to, shift gears. I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listener. So, John, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons. And John, I'm just really excited to hear your story, your experience around this topic of relationships.
Well, I've got to go back a ways.
Okay.
So I grew up in New York. I grew up in a relatively rough area, and I didn't really have any role models. On my block, there was Michael Francis and his dad, Sonny. They were in the mafia. And so they were the successful ones I saw, and some others on the block that owned oil companies and things like that. Um, and I didn't want to live in that environment. My dad was a custodian engineer. Basically, he managed a New York City school,
Okay.
and he managed the custodians. So my outlook as a young guy was I either become a custodian or I do something that may not be 100% legal.
Mhm.
And so I chose sports to get me out. But really what it was is sports chose me.
Okay.
My high school coach was one of my neighbors. He saw something in me as a young kid, running away from people and cutting through backyards. He saw how fast he was, and he was a track coach. He was an Olympic track coach. And so I need to give my first props to Jim Fraley. He got me off the streets onto the track and turned me into a very, very good athlete. And then I had Al Lauder, who was an Olympic discus thrower, who was also trained by Coach Fraley. And Al was in his 40s when I was a teenager, but every summer he would come back and train with me. So he would train with me, and he would inspire me. And I was one of the few athletes that got invited to invitational events during the summers. And I didn't have a car. I didn't have any money either. So Al would pick me up in his car, drive me to the events, and we would train together. And then fast forward a little bit, I got into business and I was actually a janitor. I had a very, very big car accident when I was 19 years old, which is what ended my athletic career. I was in a walker for quite a long time. So I got a job as a janitor. My dad got me a job. I worked as a janitor. I had one arm, one good arm, one good leg. So and I outworked all the guys that had two good arms and legs. So I worked as a janitor and decided I wanted to conquer Manhattan real estate. And everybody gave me the same story. Go to get a college degree, kid. Go get 20 years of experience in the outer boroughs because nobody starts in Manhattan. And then when you're about 45 years old, come back. And I was 27 or 28 at the time. But I didn't listen. So I kept pushing and pushing and pushing. Finally got a job at William B. May on Madison Avenue. I got very lucky to start in one of the top 3 companies. They didn't think I would last. They actually they gave me a package of buildings. I started off as a property manager. They gave me a package of buildings where every building had already given 30 days notice. So if I lost those buildings, I didn't have a job. So during my first week in Manhattan real estate, I met Barbara Corcoran, who owned the Corcoran Group at the time. And that's another long story. We don't need to get into that, but she turned into my very first business mentor. In fact, almost a business partner. Now, keep in mind, wasn't even 30 yet. I was a rough around the edges, kid from New York, no education, just a hard driving bull in a china shop. And she wanted to partner with me on a property management company. So we tried buying different companies over the years, and nothing quite worked out. And I didn't want to, she would have started one with me with no buildings, but I didn't want to be a burden to her. So I didn't, because she goes, I'll pay you salary and everything else. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to find the company that we could buy. So that didn't happen. But we've stayed friends over the years. Whenever I endorse a book, she does it. The mastermind that we're doing, she's contributing to.
That's awesome.
So I had her as a mentor. And then when I moved to North Carolina, I did real estate sales. So I reached out to a guy named Dan Douglas and another guy, Jeff Levis, and I asked them to mentor me. They both worked for Barbara Corcoran. So I asked them to mentor me how to sell real estate. So I quickly became one of the top real estate agents in Raleigh, North Carolina, when we moved down here. And then fast forward a few more years, I got into this business. So I wrote 2 best-selling books. I didn't know anything about internet marketing at this point. I wrote 2 best-selling books. I had Zig Ziglar mentoring me. He was just a wonderful man. And I became a motivational speaker. So Mr. Ziglar mentored me with that. I was actually taking his spot in certain arenas like, Amway and other places. And he would recommend me, and became a very, very good motivational speaker. I was great, did really well on stage and everything. I was also doing TV at the time. And then 2008 hit, and all my speaking gigs dried up. I also owned a construction company. It was it was actually one of the largest painting companies in the country. I owned a painting company that went under, leaving me very, very, very deep in debt. So I had two best-selling books, no money, didn't know what to do. So I was working for Iron Man magazine and Powerhouse Gym magazine. Basically, if I could increase their income, I would make a portion of that.
Okay.
And I had a feeling it wasn't going to work out. I just knew, but I knew God couldn't bless my steps if I wasn't walking. So I took anything that was in front of me. During that process, I got a call from John Benson, who's a friend of both of ours.
Yep.
And John was getting ready to speak on stage. I think he got referred to me from Bill Phillips, but John was getting ready to speak on stage, wanted some, advice from me. So we spoke just about every day for a week or so, and we became very, fast friends. And then on the last day before he was getting ready to go do his speech, he goes, "What are you working on?" I said, "Well, I'm working on something called a sales page." And he goes, "Well, send it over to me." I said, "All right." So I sent it over to him. I knew he was going to speak. A couple of days later, he emailed me back a sales page, and I read it, and I emailed him back immediately. He was still on the plane, I think. Immediately emailed. I said, "Who are you? What do you do for a living?" So we got on the phone, and he says, "You don't know who I am?" I said, "No idea who you are." He goes, "Well, some would say that I might be the best copywriter in the world." He goes, "I invented the video sales letter." I said, "Are you kidding me?" He goes, "That sales letter is yours." I said, "No, no, 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 no." I said, "I don't know anything about this business. Let's partner." I said, "You won't have to do any work. I just want to know that you're there, that I can ask questions for." Now, almost 15 years later, he's still there for me. But during this process also, I met Mike Geary. I called a friend of mine in New York, Bob Bonham, who owned the gym. And I said, "Do you know any guys that are, that are authors that write on fitness?" Because I was sick of all the bodybuilders that were writing in Iron Man magazine. So I figured if I could bring in somebody different, it might help. So Mike Geary was recommended to me. And all I thought he was a personal trainer that, maybe wrote an article here or there. I knew nothing about him.
Uh-huh.
And so him and I became fast friends working on this article together. And he asked me the same question: "What are you working on?" I said, "Well, I'm working on something, it's a digital product." He goes, "Well, you need to go on ClickBank." And I had never heard of ClickBank before.
Okay. Okay.
So I didn't know what to do. And I just told Mike, "Guide me. You just tell me what to do. Give me 5 minutes a week. I'll do everything that you tell me to do." And I did. I was working 18, 20-hour days.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened was we got on ClickBank. The product was called Old School New Body. It did $5 million in the first 90 days.
Wow.
And for the first and only time in history, ClickBank closed their doors and had John Rowley Day. They invited me in, brought my family in, and had me speak to all the ClickBank employees around the world through closed circuit TV, I guess. And so to answer your question, I've had a coach, Al Order, an athlete, Mike Geary, Zig Ziglar, and John Benson. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
So into my life in such a way that I'm able to sit here before you today, because I never, ever, ever could have done this on my own.
Yeah.
The only way I could have do it was through the blessing of God and through the help of my friends.
Yeah.
And these guys, Kevin, they're still there for me. I was out at Mike's house last year. Nobody asked me about money or business or anything else. Mike comes right over to me. He wanted to know about my health. John Benson, because I had open heart surgery a few years ago and with very bad complications. John Benson constantly is checking in on me. And I do I have time to tell one more story? Because I really need to give props to.
Absolutely.
Okay. So 4.5 years ago, I had open heart surgery. And we didn't anticipate it. I was in very good shape. It was just a genetic issue. I needed a triple bypass. So through the grapevine, John Benson finds out. John calls me immediately. He goes, "When are you going in?" I said, "In 2 weeks." He goes, "Stop working." He goes, "Don't do anything." He goes, "I'm going to finish the sales page. I'm going to finish the book if the book isn't finished." I said, "Well, the book is finished. Everything's done. It's just the sales page." So then I find out from my son later in the day. He goes, "John Benson and David Deutsch are both writing this sales page together." Now I don't know what the process is. I think John wrote it and David helped him edit it. But either way, I had John Benson and David Deutsch jump on board to help with this. And as I'm talking, I really need to realize I left David out. David Deutsch has been there with me through ups and downs, challenges. In fact, I got a call with him tonight to help me work on some email swipes that we'll be sending out next week. And never asked for anything in return. So to answer your question, I've got a long list of just amazing people that have helped me over the years. And I would say my biggest value as a business person is my network and my friends.
Yeah, totally. That is 100% evident after what you just shared, John.
Yeah.
You are this, you're like me, you and me both. We are two incredibly blessed guys that we are just completely surrounded by these amazing people, amazing entrepreneurs who we just know that they got our backs, you know. And
I agree. But one thing I could say about you, Kevin, is the reason so many people have your back, and I'm one of them, is because you're genuine. You're a genuinely good guy and you don't look for anything in return.
Yeah.
And I've always valued that in you.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that, because it's you know, it's important that we, you know, just be able to receive that feedback, you know, and that is important. And so I want to thank you for that. If you look, because you've mentioned, I mean, a number of people here, you know, we got Al, we got Barbara, we got Dan, Jeff, Zig, John, Mike, David. If you look at these relationships and you just, you know, if you look at just think of one example. I mean, I know you could probably come up with all kinds of them, but just for the purposes, I was trying to have a little fun here. If you think of all these relationships and just one thing that has taken place over the years where you knew you made this massive impact, and you also know it would have never ever happened if not for your relationship with whoever that was of the people that, and like I said, you could probably have something for every one of them, but you know, we don't have time for all that. So I just want you to choose one, and the other ones, if they hear this, they'll understand that Kevin just told John he had to choose one, you know. So
it's hard to choose one.
Yeah, I get it.
But when I look at my life as a whole, not just as my life as a businessman, not just my life as a marketer or an author, but as whole of my life, I'd have to give credit to my track coach. Jim Fraley was his name. He taught me discipline. He taught me how to set goals. He taught me how to failure was not tragic. In fact, as an athlete, you have to shoot for failure in order to get to the next level. He taught me not to be afraid of failure. He taught me to set goals, set a plan, every day incrementally work towards that goal. So if I had to just give one credit to one person, I wish he was alive to hear this, it would be Coach Jim Fraley. He got me off the streets. He got me, I went to college because of my athletic. Like, I wouldn't have gotten into college on my grades. And I got into college with athletics, and he really nurtured me and taught me, and all the things that he taught me as a young man, I still use today as an adult.
Wow, that's powerful.
But that doesn't negate all the other people who have helped me over the years, obviously.
Totally. Yeah. Well, John, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation. You know, for anybody listening to this going, man, Kev, I really like John. I like the way John shows up. How can they find out more? You got anything where you can share with them, and they find out more about, you know, what you're doing and all that kind of stuff?
Well, they can find me on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. I try not to go on social media all that much, but I do check it every day. And then we're launching a mastermind, which is I'm very, very excited about. I've dropped everything else that I'm working on, and it's called the 360 Elite Marketing Mastermind.
Okay.
And that's the domain as well, 360 Elite Marketing Mastermind. And that allows me to bring everything that I've learned and help other entrepreneurs. And we're doing it in such a way that, if you remember the book Think and Grow Rich, where Napoleon Hill said, when you bring one or more people together, it creates that third brain. We're
Yep.
not going to just do interviews. We're going to do interviews, and then as a group, we're going to work together and create that third brain. So I'm really passionate about that because I really feel like I can bring value to people that maybe some others might not. And a lot of it has to do with my age. You know, I'm 63 years old. I've been in business for 40 years, and I've got the stripes on my back to prove it. So I'm really hoping that this platform is going to give me an opportunity to help a lot of people around the world not only be successful, but stay successful and be healthy and still maintain their family life
Yeah.
and be a well-balanced person versus just a marketer or an author or a business person.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Well, John, is like I said, I just really appreciate you taking time to have this conversation. Is there anything that you just feel led to share in closing, as just one last thing before we call it a wrap here?
No, just the I'm successful and you're successful based on the people who have helped us. It doesn't mean we don't work hard, because I know you work hard and I work hard too. But I just want to thank you, because by you doing this, it helps us. I watch it as well, and it helps us as entrepreneurs. And I just appreciate how you and I stay connected as well. And I appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely. Well, John, the feeling is 100% mutual, and thanks again for taking the time to have this conversation. I'm really excited to share this with other entrepreneurs, other founders, other CEOs, because I know what kind of impact it's going to have on them. So thanks again. Really appreciate you, man.
Thanks, brother. Thank you.